and good evening. Welcome to this candidate forum for the Santa Clara County Office of Assessor. We have two candidates running for this office, the incumbent Larry Stone and Andrew Crockett. I'm Julie Cates, and I am a member of the League of Women Voters for the Los Altos-Mountain View, which is hosting this evening's forum. Now, a quick note, at the end of the Assessor candidate forum, I will provide an overview of Measure A, which is also on your primary ballot. So next slide. Okay, here. So I will be the moderator for this evening's forum, and we are grateful for our league members who are supporting this webinar. Pamela Baird heads our league voter service team. Katie Zoglin coordinates and curates the questions for the candidates. Max Beckman-Harnett is tonight's time and IT coordinator, and Lisa McLean also supports the forum. This forum is being recorded. Our team will make the recording available from our league website within a few days. So a few words about the League of Women Voters. We are a national organization with state and local leagues. Now, with a focus on the role of local leagues, that allows us to really have truly grassroots efforts. The League of Women Voters is a nonprofit organization of women and men, and we promote informed, active participation in government. As such, we have been empowering voters and defending democracy for over 100 years. The League has two distinct roles. It provides nonpartisan voter services, never endorses nor opposes any political party or candidate. But the League does take a position, and we advocate when we've studied an issue, such as education, and have developed a position on that issue. The League invites anyone who's interested in supporting to democracy and local government to join us. So we're here tonight, next slide, yeah, it's to help prepare voters for the primary election on June 7th. Ballots will be mailed to you next week, about May 9th. You can complete the ballot and return it by mail, Dropbox, or to a vote center. Vote centers will be open May 28th through Election Day, June 7th. You can always check your voter registration, and you can track your ballot by visiting the Santa Clara County Registrar of Voters at sccvote.org. You can also track your submitted ballot at where'smyballot.sos.ca.gov. Voters Edge. This is a key resource for voters. And at this site, you can get all the facts before you write in your votes. The site provides nonpartisan information on the candidates, ballot measure, and campaign financing. Go to Voters Edge, enter your street address and zip code, and you can check out your ballot. You'll see federal, state, local races, as well as information on ballot measures. So we're going to switch gears now. We're going to talk about tonight's forum and the Santa Clara County Assessor. And the assessor's primary responsibility is to annually determine the proper taxable value for each and all properties so that the owner is assured of paying the correct amount of tax to support local government services. It is an elected office with 4-year terms, has no term limits. The Santa Clara County Assessor's Office has, I think at last count, about 258 employees. It's over the last 10 years, Santa Clara County property assessment has increased from $308 billion in 2012 to $577 billion in 2021. Now, while the assessor's office does not collect nor allocate tax funds, their assessments lead to funding vital public services. For example, over half the taxes derived from property assessments go to public education, our K-12 and community college systems. So for this evening's forum, the candidates have agreed to follow our league ground rules, maintaining civil discourse. Thank you, candidates. We expect this forum to take up to an hour, and during the forum, audience members will be able to see whoever is speaking, which could be the moderator, myself, or the candidates. We have an electronic timer that will display the candidates' remaining time to respond to a question. We're giving candidates up to 2 minutes to complete their opening and their closing statements, but then they'll have up to 90 seconds during the question round to respond to questions. When their time is up, the timer shows a rotating red band. I will say, thank you, and please complete your current sentence and end. We'll alternate between the candidates in providing the first response to a question. Our questions have been curated by the forum committee with inputs provided during registration and social media. Now, audience members, as you've noticed, you do not have access to video or audio. Instead, you may submit questions using the webinar's Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And we will include as many audience questions as time permits. So at that point, we're now ready to move into the forum. And again, I can introduce the two candidates live who are running for Santa Clara County Assessor. Candidate, when I introduce you, please raise your hand. So Andrew Crockett, there, Larry Stone. Great, thank you, candidates. So I'm going to start in alphabetical order to kick this off. Candidate Andrew Crockett, you have up to 2 minutes to make your opening statement.
Hello, I'm Andrew Crockett. I'm a CPA, financial analyst, and California certified appraiser. I understand finance, and I care about the rampant economic inequity that many in my generation and younger generations face. What has me run for Santa Clara County Assessor was sparked by a conversation with one of my Masonic brothers who has a thriving business and revealed to me that himself, his wife, and 2 children live in a garage because that's all they can afford in Santa Clara County. The available assessors data verifies that this trend is exacerbating. There's been a 12% decline in home ownership over the past decade, while we've had a 9% increase in population. The assessor, in the process of creating the assessment roll each year, creates an enormous amount of property data. And that property data file is kept behind the most expensive paywall in the nation at $47,195 for a single CD of all of the most essential information necessary for us to address the housing crisis. I am running for Santa Clara County Assessor to bring much needed data transparency to this office. That data, in every other county in the nation, a small fee or no fee is charged for it because we know it's essential to fighting for the right to housing. This dedication is what I call public service. It's taking the resources of an office and making them available for our broad-based prosperity in Santa Clara County.
Thank you. Candidate Larry Stone, you now have up to 2 minutes to make your opening statement.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity for the sponsorship of the League of Women Voters. I'd like to open by talking about my record of performance as the Santa Clara County Assessor for the past 27 years. You know, the position of assessor is different than any other elected official you'll be interviewing for. Assessors don't make laws or set public policy. Assessors have one and only one responsibility, and that's property taxes. The assessor is a management job, not a political job. There's only one assessor in each of the 58 counties in California. There's no mayor, city council, or city manager to share that responsibility or share that risk. As the assessor, I am solely responsible for the management of a $500 billion assessment roll, generating $6 billion in property tax revenue annually, benefiting schools and local governments. So my 27 years as the assessor, I believe, is an asset, not a liability. Experience and integrity are absolutely essential to successfully perform this job. Fair and accurate assessments is the job of the assessor. So serious risk to schools and local government can happen if the assessor is inexperienced. So a little bit on my experience. In addition to the 27 years I've served as the Santa Clara County Assessor, for 50 years, I've been in the real estate investment and development business. I've been a California certified appraiser. During 27 years, assessed values have increased 402%. My staff has increased only 3.1%. There are only 7 more employees in my office than there were the day I took office in 1995. And I've returned $23.2 million of my budget back to the general fund unspent. I've only overspent my budget 1 year out of 27. So that's the reason I'm running. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I will present the questions that were curated by league members and candidates. Again, you'll have up to 90 seconds to respond to each question. And this one, we're going to kick off with Larry Stone, followed by Andrew Crockett. The question is, what are the most significant challenges facing the assessor's office?
Well, 2. One is personnel. It's very hard. About 3 years ago, the county gave an incentive for people to retire. So who retires are the people, your most senior appraisers and auditors. So there was an incentive because they were facing a tremendous budget deficit. So I had about 20 people, a lot of senior experienced people leave the office at that time because they had a financial incentive to do so. So filling those positions, which you can't do with entry-level people, is the biggest challenge we have. The other thing is we need to upgrade our computer system. For up until a couple of years ago, there was not a single California compliant computer system for assessors in the state of California. There now is 2. So I'm involved in creating a contract right now, which we should have on the street probably within the next 3 months. And I believe we'll have an existing California compliant computer system. So those are the 2 major problems I think that exist in my office. And of course, trying to continue to do the wonderful work that we've been doing for 26 years.
Thank you. Andrew Crockett.
Yes, the 2 things that I see as at the forefront of what the assessor's office faces is, yes, the database upgrade, but also it's an upgrade to the employee experience. One of the important things that's come to light via February Gallup poll internal to the Santa Clara County was that the assessor's office scored 3% out of 100 compared to other organizations and agencies that Gallup International had polled on employee satisfaction. And what this indicates is that people do not feel respected or as partners in the venture of serving this county. And that's one of the things that I want to bring to this office, is that sense of partnership where all of the experience of the office can be brought to bear on, in particular, this upgrade of the database. Because you need to have a background of trust when you do a data infrastructure upgrade, because people are afraid that you're going to make their jobs redundant. You have to have that trust so that when the upgrade takes place, they know that you value them and you want their jobs to be easier, and you will make sure and fight to keep them in that office as long as they wish to serve our county.
Thank you. Our next question. Santa Clara County is large and very diverse. It includes rural farmlands, large city centers, sprawling commercial properties owned by the most valuable corporations in the world. How does the assessor's office ensure complete and accurate annual assessments for all properties in the county? And our first speaker is Andrew Crockett.
Complete and accurate assessments for the entire assessment role of the county. One of the things that I am deeply grateful for is the integrity that's been built into that system by Assessor Stone's long-term in office. I look to build on that foundation and continue to push the boundaries of accuracy in the office, because in terms of the properties in Santa Clara County, there are 484,000 parcels, 500,000 if you round it. And in terms of the actual properties that need to be appraised actively rather than passively, because Prop 13, it's an automatic 2% increase, those are automatic each year. Those don't need a lot of attention paid to ensure their accuracy. But for the 50,000 or so a year that have to be adjusted due to either Proposition 8 downward adjustments or new construction or changes of ownership, those need to be looked at more closely. And even though overall there's a very high accuracy in the office of assessments from year to year based on audits, in terms of the ones where you need to focus on the most, the ones that are those changes in value, it's about 10% can have some errors in them. My job is to push that boundary outward to get as close to zero as humanly possible.
Next, we'll hear from Larry Stone.
Well, that's interesting, because every 5 years, the State Board of Equalization comes into my office and all assessors in the state and does a comprehensive audit and sample survey of our assessments. The last one they did in my office, our accuracy of assessments rates was 99.48% accurate. That's about as close to perfect as you could possibly get. With respect to customer satisfaction, we survey customer satisfaction in every way possible. In other words, when you make contact with our office, whether it's online, whether it's in person or on the phone, you immediately have an opportunity to evaluate the treatment and that you got from the person on the other side of the phone. Our customer satisfaction rating in the last survey for last year was 89.6% satisfied. Now, we're a government agency. We're a government tax agency. I believe 89% positive rating for customer service in a government tax agency is phenomenal. And that's why the Santa Clara County Assessor's Office is widely considered the best assessor's office in the state of California.
Thank you. We're going through questions that have been submitted, and we want each of you to have an opportunity to respond. And so some of these questions you may have touched upon some of these topics in your earlier remarks, but just to be sort of fair and balanced, we're going to allow both candidates to respond to the same question. Larry Stone will be the first speaker for this question. The question is, in what ways does the assessor interact with the public? And how can customer service be measured and improved?
Well, I think I just answered that, but thank you. Yes, I mean, customer service is the most important thing. When I first became the assessor, customer service was an afterthought. We were good, we made accurate assessments, and the staff didn't think too much about it. I made customer service the #1 priority. I come from the city of Sunnyvale, where customer services, as you may know, is one of the best in the country. In fact, Bill Clinton declared the city of Sunnyvale when he came out at my invitation in 1993 and said it was the best run local government in America. So I've transferred those kinds of things that I've learned in the city of Sunnyvale to my office. So as I said, every contact that any taxpayer or citizen or government agency makes with my office, they're immediately asked to survey the satisfaction, to survey the service they receive, whether it's online, in person at the customer service desk, or by phone. And we service, and it's real time. We immediately, so if we get a negative comment, it immediately goes to the supervisor or the chief of the division, and we respond immediately. And that's why our customer satisfaction ratings, with over 3,000 ratings over the last year, has us at 89.6% positive customer satisfaction.
Thank you. I'm going to repeat the question just, for Andrew's benefit. And same question being asked to both candidates. In what way does the assessor interact with the public? How can customer service be measured and improved?
The assessor interacts with the public in two ways. One is passively, the other is actively. Passively is when people come to the assessor, and those are the folks that Assessor Stone mentioned were the customers that were being surveyed in that 89.6% survey satisfaction. However, that's only the passive role. The active role is when you reach out to the community and make sure the community knows what services are provided by that office. This is the active role of the assessor as public educator. And one of the most important aspects of that in the 21st century is content that's tailored to the people as they expect it to be, which is video-based content that is not only in the language that they expect, but recognizes the language and cultural diversity of this county. So we need language-specific content pushed out online and distributed to the community so that they know what is available at the assessor's office. This is a public service as well as a customer service, because if we only serve the customers that already are in the know about the services at the assessor's office, we're not serving all the people who could be taking advantages of those services. This is what I mean by the assessor's office is a public service.
Thank you. Next question. And Andrew will be the first speaker. The office of the assessor comes with a large staff, as we've noted, over 250 employees. So what types of issues does the assessor face in leading a large department, and how should the assessor address those issues?
To address the issues of managing a large department, one needs to have data-driven solutions and diagnostics of what's going on in the department. One of the things I very much look forward to in the 7-month transition period in the months ahead is being able to survey and interview all of the members of this office so that I get a full picture of what's there, because I need them to be my partners in making this office the sterling example of government service that I dream it to be. And building upon what Stone has already built in this office would be the privilege of a lifetime. And this is something that I care very much about, is tapping into the more than 2,000 years of experience that exists in that office, from the lowest level employees all the way up to upper management, so that we are partners, a community together in service. It's not just about the experience at the very top that matters. It's about being partners with all of the people whose experience matters from the lowest level to the top to ensure the best service that is possible for Santa Clara County's assessor's office.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Larry Stone.
Andrew has been somewhat critical of the employees in our office and how they feel about their work. So I looked at the turnover rate, exclusive of people who retire from the work. And I said we had retirements that were extremely high because of the financial incentive given. I looked at it over 5 years in a row. And outside of retirements, we have lost an average of 11.8 employees per year over 5 years. Now that's from all causes. Some people move to a different department, they get promoted somewhere else. And some people just leave for different reasons. That's 11.8 people per year with 150 employees. The state average for government employees is 21 people per year. We're one of the lowest turnover rates in all of Santa Clara County. Almost half of what they are in many of the departments, according to the survey that was done. So the proof is always in the pudding. If people leave, they're unhappy. They're not leaving in our office, and very few of them, I mean, maybe 2 or 3 a year leave because they're unhappy. And I think that says a lot about the environment. The culture that we have in the office is extremely good. People like to work there and they stay.
Thank you. The next question. The backlog of assessed property values being disputed and or appealed has increased from 27 billion 8 years ago to 66 billion last year. How can and how should the growing backlog be addressed? And our first speaker is Larry Stone.
Can I ask a question? The backlog of what are you talking about again?
Property values that have been disputed or are in an appeals process.
Okay, yeah, I understand. Yeah, it's actually higher than that. We have about 7,000 active appeals in my office where the value at risk, what we call the value at risk, the difference between what we have it on the assessment roll for and what the taxpayer says it should be on is a little less than $100 billion. Now, 58% of that value are commercial properties. In fact, the top 10 companies in the county represent about 52% of the total value at risk of all assessment appeals. 94% of those are values of major companies. And we retain every year in, year out on properties that have appealed, we retain 96% of the value at risk. That shows how accurate our assessments are and how well we perform the original assessments, because taxpayers who appeal generally are not awarded their value. I can tell you this: managing the assessment of the Levi Stadium or the Apple spaceship is tremendously complex. I had to sue the Assessment Appeals Board because the Assessment Appeals Board cut the value of Levi Stadium in half because they said, well, they only play football there for 6 months a year, therefore they should only pay half the assessment, even though they control the entire building for everything that goes on.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Andrew Crockett.
Excellent. When it comes to appeals, the fact that appeals have increased is a demonstration of a healthy interaction with the assessor's office. Because when people appeal, it means that they understand the system they're in. One of the greatest dangers people face when they have a change in assessment is that they don't appeal it in time if there's an error in it. So the fact that people are engaging in this is exactly the sort of problem that an assessor should love to have. And part of this, in terms of the process, it's about just having people available to run the appeals process, having folks that are talented and in position and thrilled to be working at the assessor's office. This is why the Gallup poll is so important, to highlight the upside of bringing a culture of mutual respect between all employees in the assessor's office to help tackle this challenge. The Gallup poll said that the assessor's office was in the 3rd percentile of all agencies they've ever surveyed. We can get to the middle of the bell curve. That's what I would aim to achieve. And if people are thrilled to come into the work, they're going to be able to get more work done with the same quality that we are accustomed to seeing, that Larry Stone has demanded of his employees for so long.
Thank you. Next question. The database systems in the assessor's office have been described as using aging technology. Should something be done about this? And if so, what? And our first speaker is Andrew Crockett.
Yes, the database was programmed right after Prop 13 was passed in the late 70s and was old when Larry Stone became assessor in 1995. And as time has progressed, the gap in technology, COBOL coding is what it's coded in, which was a language developed in the 1950s. While it's stable, there's fewer and fewer people who know how to code it. So time is of the essence to get this upgraded, because we don't want to have all the COBOL coders go extinct before we upgrade. This is an imperative. And in terms of assessment systems, we're looking at $40 to $50 million to upgrade this system robustly to modern standards. And part of that process is reaching out to the municipal governments and the state government and finding out what it is that they are looking for in a quality database. How can we share data? There are some rare properties, such as the Levi's Stadium, that there's only a few stadiums in the state. Being able to have relevant data that can be exported and shared between counties for accurate and timely appraisals benefits the entire state. And this sort of collaborative approach to upgrading the database is necessary for us to enter the 21st century here in Silicon Valley.
Next, we'll hear from Larry Stone.
Yes, when I took office, our mainframe computer system was an HP 3000. Tremendous risk. The first thing I did as the assessor and say, we need to get off that risk, and we did. We turned it into a normal computer system, even though there are COBOL, there's some programs in our office, not all of them, that would still require COBOL. Now, about 5 years ago, we decided, because there was no existing California compliant computer system for large counties, we hired a vendor and we're going to build our own system. $2.6 million into it, and 3 years into it, the vendor walked. I negotiated all $2.6 million of that money back, but we were back to square one, and we'd given up 3 years. As I said, there's been no modern computer system for California assessors in this state until the last 2 years. So what Andrew's talking about is correct, but it exists all over. But let me tell you something about COBOL. About 90% of your credit cards, when you swipe your credit card through, is COBOL, is done with COBOL programming. Banks use them all of the time. It's an archaic system, but it's a very functional system.
Our next question. When Proposition 13 was first implemented in 1978, property taxes were shared equally between homeowners and commercial properties. Now, homeowners pay a much greater share of property taxes. What is your view of the situation, and what, if anything, should California do to change it, and how? And our first speaker is Larry Stone.
As a young council member in 1978, I actively and aggressively opposed Proposition 13. I may be the only elected official you know in California for 40 years has said publicly that I think that Proposition 13 is one of the 2 worst things that's ever happened in California. It's created a system where I bought my home in 1975 for 1975 for $85,000. It's assessed at $278,000 today. and Zillow says it's worth 3.6 million. That is not a fair system. It doesn't work. Commercial industrial properties, and I know because I have been one, do not pay their fair share of property taxes. And I oppose Proposition 15, as the league knows, for two very valid reasons. First of all, it was virtually impossible to reassess to market value all commercial industrial properties each year. My appraisal staff had said it would take 3 to 5 years to do what Proposition 13 says. There are approximately 35,000 commercial industrial properties. The other reason I oppose Proposition 15 is because it would have put tens of thousands of small businesses out of business. You know, small businesses pay their property taxes a pro rata share of their lease. So the property taxes would have gone up for those small businesses right in the middle of COVID 8, 9, 10 times. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Andrew Crockett.
So when it comes to being an assessor, it's important to be an impartial part of the finance system. Our job as assessors is to maintain the assessment role and take the data that's produced in that and make sure it's in the hands of our legislators and community leaders. Some of those leaders led on Proposition 15 a few years ago, and I looked at the law, and in terms of my own personal opinion, I saw definite drawbacks to it. But overall, when I did the calculus, it seemed to be more good than bad. That said, it's likely to come up again in the future, some sort of variant of it. And what I want to make sure is whatever comes before the voters in the future is firmly grounded in the facts of the matter when it comes to what the housing and property markets are doing and how we can create a system that's more fair and equitable in terms of people paying in their fair share to the tax system in a way that doesn't displace people from their homes or displace people from their businesses or communities or centers of worship. These are things that need to be considered. And as assessor, my duty is to get that data before the people who are crafting the future generations of such legislation.
Our next question is, in California, the Board of Equalization was established to regulate county assessment practices and to equalize county assessment ratios. Does the State Board of Equalization provide appropriate oversight over the Santa Clara County Assessor's Office? Should the relationship be improved? Why or why not? And we'll start with Andrew Crockett.
State Board of Equalization is our partner in attaining excellence in assessment. Because as a CPA, I know that it's extremely important for things like financial statements to have an outside party come in on a periodic basis and review what's being done to ensure that we are not misrepresenting the facts to ourselves or others. Sometimes that misrepresentation is just a side effect of psychology. There's no malice intent. So having a partner in the State Board of Equalization allows us to true ourselves by the laws as they're written and perfect our public service to our communities by seeing those laws fidelitously applied. This also shows up in my desire to do more public outreach to the community, because having the State Board of Equalization on our side, we would be able to tie them in with it, because anything that we do in this county could have benefits up and down the state in terms of public outreach and education. Working with them to see our good work in my assessor's office spread throughout the state to the benefit of the 40 million Californians is only logical. These are our allies and these are our friends.
Next, we'll hear from Larry Stone.
Well, the answer to your question is yes and no. The State Board of Equalization provides an important service in regulating overseeing, and guidance to assessors. It has also become extremely too political over time. It's a place where people that are termed out of the legislature land until they can get their next job because of working for the government is something they want to continue to do. So every 5 years, as I mentioned, the State Board of Equalization does a comprehensive audit of every assessor's office in the state. They draw a sample of the entire assessment roll. They do appraisals and check the appraisals against the assessor's appraisals. They review the mandatory audits of major corporations. And it's a very complicated formula, but they measure the accuracy of what the assessor's office does. And as I mentioned in my opening statements, our accuracy ratio was 99.48%. Now, as an assessor, you don't want to be over 100% because that assess in general that you're over assessing folks. I don't know how you can come any closer to perfection. These are not my values. These are the values of the compliance ratio of the State Board of Equalization. But I wish the State Board of Equalization would pay more attention to property values.
Thank you. For our next question, and Larry, again, you'll be our first speaker. If you are elected, what changes would you like to see implemented by the end of your 4-year term? And why? And do any of these changes require additional funding for the assessor's department?
No, they don't. Well, the computer system requires a substantial amount of funding. Andrew estimated $50 million. I think it's a little bit less than that, but it's substantial. So that's the only issue that I can see. We're well funded, and because we're so lean, as I mentioned, I've returned $23.2 million of my budget unspent back to the general fund because we're very productive in what we do. I proposed in the middle of COVID, when the county executive came to us, all apartment heads, and said, we are facing a $200 million budget deficit at this time. I asked all of you to reach deep and see what you can do. I did a reorganization of one of the units in my department. It eliminated 18 people, all of which stayed somewhere in the county and some in my office. Productivity went up to 35%, and error rates went down 75%. That's the kind of thing that I need to do, to continue to do, in order to be able to return money to the general fund unspent.
Okay, next we'll hear from Andrew Crockett.
Thank you. Changes. Day one, I would drop the most expensive paywall in the nation, the $47,195 charge that is currently levied on any nonprofit or government agency that wants access to the property data in the assessor's database. This is imperative. This is an embarrassment for Santa Clara County that we are the most expensive in the nation by several times over. The average rate is normally a couple $100 or free for most counties. Day one, that would change. Next one, computer system upgrade, as Larry Stone recognized, and I do as well, that needs to be tackled urgently. And while I do not believe we would be able to get it done in the first year, it would be done by the end of my first term. That is the standard to which I will hold myself accountable in the office of assessor. Additionally, the outreach and education efforts may require some additional funding from the Board of Supervisors. I will work with them to secure that funding so that no one is left out in our community of the privileges and advantages of Assessor's Office services. And lastly, I will implement Sustainable Accounting Standards Board standards for the office so we can lead in carbon neutrality among assessors' offices nationwide.
Thank you. This is the time that we would take questions from the audience. And the ones that have been submitted, it appears that we have already addressed. And so there was no new topics from the audience, which means that we're at a final question before closing statements. And the question is, what is the question you wish that we had asked you? Why and how would you answer it? And our first speaker is Andrew Crockett. You want me to repeat the question?
No, I was about to respond. The question I would have liked to ask was, who has been endorsing your campaign? And the reason for this is my campaign has been reaching this inflection point recently where every day brings new endorsements. It's remarkable how the community is coming together for the assessor's office to see change. Not necessarily because there's animosity towards Stone, but as Delane Easton, the former superintendent of public instruction, said when she endorsed me, we need new eyes, fresh perspectives, so that the things that are obvious to do can be done. And that is free of malice. Likewise, I have been endorsed by Progress in Poverty, a liberal economic think tank, as their first ever endorsement in their history because of my stand for data transparency. I have been endorsed by Peter Fikowski, the founder of the Foundation for Climate Restoration, because of my stand for making the assessor's office carbon neutral. I have been endorsed by the Progressive Democrats for Social Justice because of my stand for housing data cooperation. And I have been endorsed by the Silicon Valley Asian Pacific American Democratic Club because of my commitment to working with the diverse language communities in Santa Clara County, many of whom are Asian descent, so that they have access to the privileges of the office.
So Larry Stone, what is the question you wish we had asked you and why, and how would you answer it?
I would like to have been able to respond to the claim about the cost of data of our database. Let me say what Andrew said about the cost that we charge is absolutely false. Let me tell you, I looked at this because he's made this charge before. Over the last 2 years, we have offered data for free to public agencies. 27 public agencies, 12 cities, 5 county agencies, 3 school districts and universities, 7 regional agencies, and 1 media outlet. All of those were offered for nothing because they're public purpose things. One of them, interestingly enough, was an associate professor at Santa Clara University, an urban planner focused on the very things that Andrew talks about: environmental sustainability and housing affordability. So the claim that we charge $47,000 for everybody is just plain false. We do charge for commercial use of our database. And in the last 3 years, we've had 3 major corporations who buy this. They aggregate the data and they sell it to the public. But nobody who has a public service purpose in getting to our data, and we look at the purpose of it, gets it for nothing.
Thank you. Well, candidates, that completes our question rounds. Thank you very much. And now we're going to move on to closing remarks. And as a reminder, you each will have up to 2 minutes for your remarks. And for the closing statements, we'll start with Larry Stone.
I would like to talk about the diversity of my staff because it's one of the most important things to me. And when I took office in 1995, 45% of the assessor staff were female and 40% were people of color. Today, 55% of my staff are female and 70% of the assessor staff are people of color. What about the executive management? Well, in 1995, 6 of the executive managers were male and 2 were female. Today, 5 of the 9 executive managers are female, 4 of the 5 are people of color with 1 LGBTQ. Of all the achievements I've had in this office, that is what I'm most proud of the entire time I've been here. You know, the role of the assessor is clearly defined by the State Board of Equalization and the Revenue and Taxation Code of California. Virtually all of the data that I spoke about is readily available to the public, the media, and community agencies. A small amount of it is secured because it involves Social Security numbers. So I really would like to return to what I said in the beginning. I've had 351 community and business and political leaders endorse my campaign, including, sadly to say now, Norm Mineta was one of my first endorsers at that time. Mayor Sam Liccardo and all former living mayors, including Tom McHenry, Ron Gonzalez, Chuck Reed, Blanca Alvarado, Rod Dearden, Diane McKenna, and Becky Morgan all support my campaign and endorse my campaign. I have a list, as I said, of 351, and they all did this within 60 days at the time I announced. I think that I would like all of you to just consider my record. As I said, 27 years in this job is an asset. It is not a liability.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Closing remarks from Andrew Crockett.
So one note, it is easy to cherry pick data, and leaving out the number of times that data has been requested and denied to worthy recipients is part of that constellation. I'm Andrew Crockett. I'm a CPA and financial analyst and appraiser. I'm here because I know the numbers, and I know how they can be manipulated, and I know how they can be fidelitous. I want to be fidelitous to serve you. I ask for your vote in this race for Santa Clara County Assessor. And in closing this evening, the thing that I want to do most is acknowledge Assessor Stone for his long career of service. For while there are points on which we disagree, I look forward to working with him for the 7-month transition period, while he teaches me all of the things that are most important about maintaining the integrity of the assessment roles as he sees fit. With this foundation of stone, I will build a bright future for this valley. And it will be a future of public service, where this office is recognized for its essential role in government finance, public education, data coordination, and leadership in the realm of sustainability. This is what a vote for Andrew Crockett, the CPA, for Santa Clara County Assessor means. And I look forward to our partnership in making that reality Silicon Valley's future. Thank you. I look forward to your support.
Thank you very much. And may we go again to the closing slides for the forum. So thank you, candidates, for serving our community by running for county assessor and in participating in tonight's forum. I'd also like to thank the volunteers, the league volunteers who made this forum possible, and everyone in the audience. Next slide. For those of you in the audience, I want to make sure you're aware of all of the candidate forums that have been hosted by leagues in Santa Clara County. These are the forums for our county sheriff, county district attorney, county assessor tonight. And then also there are forums for the congressional 16th district seat and assembly district 26. You can find recordings of these forums on our league website, www.lwvlamv.org, and YouTube sites. Next slide. So next week, when you receive your election ballot, be sure to visit our League of Women Voters Elections webpage. It provides links to learn about your voter registration, how to learn more about the election races and candidates, measures, with reminders that you can deposit your signed ballot in a ballot drop box, post office, mailbox, or vote center. So do plan to complete your ballot and vote early. Next slide. So the League of Women Voters believes that a democratic government depends upon the informed and active participation of its citizens. We hope that the insights that the audience members gained from this forum will help as they complete their primary election ballot. And, to all of you, we count on your vote, your voice to make democracy work. And so thank you. This concludes our Santa Clara County Candidates Forum. And candidates, you are free to sign off now. But the webinar is going to stay open because, as I mentioned briefly at the start of this webinar, that we have a bonus session where, for those in the audience who'd like to learn more about Measure A, I will give an overview of Measure A and the arguments in favor and the pros and arguments against the cons. So we're now are closing the candidate forum, and then we're going to move to the educational portion on Measure A. So may I go to the next slide, please? So first of all, what is Measure A all about? Well, it concerns term limits of the board of directors for the Santa Clara Valley Water District. Now, the Valley Water was founded in 1929. It serves about 2 million, people in Santa Clara County by providing reliable and safe supply of water and stewardship of streams. Its board of directors has 7 members, and that currently serve up to 3 4-year terms. The Valley Water has 1,000 employees. It has a budget of $838 million for the fiscal year of 2021-22. The stewardship includes 32 safe and clean water and flood protection projects, 10 dams and surface reservoirs, 3 water treatment plants, and a water purification center. Next slide. So what's on the ballot? Measure A, what is it about? And very succinctly, it asks the following question: that shall the measure amending the Santa Clara Valley Water District Ordinance 11-1 to limit board members to 4 successive 4-year terms be adopted? So that's the wording for Measure A on the ballot. Now let's go back and again remind ourselves, what is the situation? Yeah, we go into the next slide, right? So again, this is about term limits for the water district board members. And basically, the California law has allowed term limits of 3 successive 4-year terms. So someone could serve for 12 years total. And prior to that, there were no limits on the number of terms. Next slide. So the pro arguments, if you're for Measure A, what are your arguments? And it is, you can read it here. It's also in your voter information guides. Many of you received those at home today or the last couple of days. But it promotes that given the need for consistent expertise on district boards, supporting Measure A will ensure that Santa Clara County maintains critical experience during this historic period of water resource protection and management. And confirming the board at 4 term limits would allow complex projects like the Anderson Dam runoff retrofit to continue construction and be fully completed by consistent leadership, potentially saving hundreds of millions of dollars by avoiding costly mid-course changes. That's the gist of the pro arguments. There's more information in your voter information guides that you received at home. Let's go to the con arguments. So the con arguments is that Measure A is misleading and deceptive because it is masquerading as a term limit measure, but it actually increases the length of time politicians can stay in office, even though some of these same politicians have already been in office for 20 years. So it shows the need for new leadership on the board, 3 of their own board members voting against this, putting this measure on the ballot. And you can read more about it in your packet. So next slide. So we as League of Women Voters just really want to highlight for you that you will see Measure A on your ballot, and it involves the Santa Clara Valley water term limits. A yes vote is a vote to approve this amendment, which increases the number of terms that members of the board may serve up to 4 successive 4-year terms. A no vote is a vote to reject the amendment and maintain the current term limits of 3 successive 4-year terms. So that concludes our overview of Measure A, to give you a little bit more background when you see that on your ballot. And with that, we are ready to conclude this webinar. Thank you.